Okay. So, when we start? Hello and welcome. Thank you for attending this evening's webinar, which we're going to talk about how anyone can pay their mortgage off with one investment property. So, our company has been operating now since 1996, and we've been showing thousands of people how to do this, and using all the information is available, so that by the end of the webinar, it's going to be only a choice whether you do things in the right way or not. So there's going to be no ignorance anymore about this, because it's all going to be a choice. So in regards to all this, I would like to now talk about a disclaimer, which is this information that I'm going to be providing is not to give any kind of advice, and it's all my work that I do, opinions and experiences. So in order to do this, so you can see what we've done, I'm going to share with you testimonials of some of the clients that have gone through the company in the last few years, and kind of fresh clients the last 3 to 5 years, but we've got thousands and thousands of them. So you can see that, you know, if anyone can do it, anybody else can do it as well. So would you like to play the testimonial?
You feel at home with this company, like Landmark Investments.
I let them know what I wanted, and they provided me the options, and this place was the perfect option for what I wanted.
So that's 7 properties overall, which has been pretty exciting. We never thought we'd be able to do that.
Plan for 1, 2, 3, and within a year we got 4 with Landmark, which is really, I thought it's not doable, but yeah, Landmark make it happen.
They make it like as if it's very easy, because they know what they're doing and you can trust them. From here, from two properties, actually the aim is to pay off the first house, and then from there we would like to grow more.
Landmark got pretty much like everything in there, from the finance, accounting, lawyer, real estate. So it saved me all the times like to go through one by one. I just go there and then like everything's done.
Listen to what our needs were, and yeah, we've been more than comfortable to take that step to move forward. So we managed to secure 8 properties within the first 2 months of being here.
I would have no hesitation in recommending Landmark. In fact, I've already done so.
4 houses I bought it and without any extra payments, so I didn't know about this. And I've been so happy with this explanation, and it's unbelievable, yeah, but it became true. So initially I've been scared, yeah, definitely, but now I'm very, very confident. Yeah, thank you to Landmark.
So far it's been pretty great with Landmark. We've had 3 property managed with Landmark, and it's been great. A smooth process, very quick from start to finish. So I'm very, very happy and highly recommend Landmark to anybody who's looking at investing in property. Landmark is the company to go for.
Okay, well, that's a bit of an introduction for you as to, you know, what you could be doing as well if you decide to follow your dreams and your heart in regards to achieving things that you probably haven't done before. Because as you know, if you want to have something you never had, you have to do something you never did. So it's about the fear, I guess, of the unknown that stops most people from advancing themselves in life, because they believe that some imaginary thing or event, they believe that it's going to be real. But, you know, the best way to get rid of fear is to face it, because fear is nothing more than, you know, an illusion, because 99% of all the things that most people fear never come to pass. So a bit of information here, introduction. My name is Mario Pizarro, and I'm the founder of the company. I've been in finance, money, property business, excuse me, for now 30 years, with this company 27 years. And our mission statement is we'd like to help people to achieve greatness, because everyone can. And it's all about trying to put light in the path to dispel all the myths about that you can't do things. Because I say to all my clients that we all have immense power, that we just don't know how to use it. And most people put themselves in a small box because they believe in the system, that what they have is all they're ever going to have, and to have more they have to struggle to get it. But once you understand the main concept of how to create wealth, which is understanding where our money goes and why it goes there, then you realize that we've been made believe that we're very little, when in fact we are immense and we don't have no boundaries. But it's just that we don't know how to use that power, because our beliefs have been corrupted by the people that created the system to make us believe that we are not much more than just workers to work to pay a mortgage and to pay taxes. So our mission statement is to help everyone that wants to learn. We show all our strategies. We don't charge money for showing them the strategies, because everything exists already in the public domain. It's just most people don't know how to look for it. And the reason why is because most people truly, they don't know what they want in life. And the reason for that is because even though the system that we live in has made us to believe that we're not that much more than just here to work to pay taxes, also gives us some comforts, I guess. And these little comforts, people think, well, as long as I've got that, I'm happy. Which means that we give up all our opportunities by, playing for small. Like, Nelson Mandela once said, there is no passion in life to be found by playing small. So we need to try and get bigger goals, bigger dreams, so that, that it'll make us wake up in the morning to do greater things than, being stuck in the hamster wheel, that, the habits of doing things but we don't know. I'm sure that feeling is a lot of people do end up at that point in time in their lives, that they can see not advancing further. And that's only because we don't understand. So this webinar, I hope it'll give you ideas and inspiration to begin a new path in your life to achieve great things very, very quickly. Because once you start on this path, you'll find that these things happen very quick. Like, for instance, when I say to people, I can show you how you can pay the mortgage within 5 years. The thing begins within 2 months. You start to see how it progresses very quickly. So it's not going to be at the end of the 5 years when you see a great big lump of money sitting in your bank account. No, it happens from the minute you start to say, I want to do this. Once you start, within 2 months, you start to see, right, how things start to operate. Now, we're going to start the information now. So please stay focused, because I'll speak a little bit faster than normal, because I also get very excited, right, about this. So let's put on our, running shoes, or mental running shoes, to make this thing work quickly. So an idea can change your life. So remember this. One idea is what it's all about. If you can follow one idea in your life, right, and that idea is going to give you anything you want, right? Don't try and work out how it's going to work. Just follow it, because nobody understands how things will work in the future, especially if it's something you've never done before. But the how comes to those that actually start and begin the journey. If we try to analyze this using our knowledge, of course, you're not going to understand it, because your knowledge is limited. So therefore, if you knew about what I'm going to talk about, you would have been doing it. But because you don't know what it's about, you're going to struggle a little bit if you try and work it out with the information you have. Remember, the reason why I put the video testimonials there before is so you can see some of those people in there. Okay, and every one of those people started with no investment properties. There's a guy that's got 7, 8, and one guy says, I've got 4 in a year. That guy ended up with 10 in 2 years, right? So it's something they didn't know how it worked. All they did is they faced in the direction that they wanted to go, and everything was, all the roads merged into one, and they started to advance themselves further and prosper. Okay, so it's all about this. Now, there are a number of questions here that I'd like to put forward to you. And one of them is, if there was a way to pay the mortgage that you've got right now in your home in 5 years rather than 30 years, would you want to take a look? right? Now, the other question is, would you like to know how to double your income? Okay, and the third question is, if you also like to know how you could retire within 10 years with between 5 and 10 properties in your portfolio, right? So these are questions that I ask people to see, to make them start to think, because as you know, the hardest work in life to do is to think. Some people say that only 1 in 100 people think. 2 of them thinks that they think, and the rest of them don't think at all. I think that number is much, much less than that. I think that only 1 person in 1,000 thinks, because thinking is very, very hard to do, right? I mean, focused thinking and also sustained thinking. Of course, you can think something very quickly, but then you get distracted. But it's about constant thinking that is very difficult to do, because this in the constant thinking and focus is where all the wealth appears. This is where all this stays in there, right? Now, let's talk a bit about how these work in relation to why we have a 30-year mortgage, right? Why do we have a loan that long for that long time? Okay, why do you think that is? Okay, now I tell people that the system is being created by the people that actually own all the money. Now, most people now are starting to understand this, because since we got thrown into this pandemic, right? People are starting to see things are very different than before, right? And people are starting to see now through their normal news, not the line news, that many, many strange things have been happening. But as you know, that the financial system we live in is created by the people that control the money, right? Some call them central bankers, some call them rip-offs, okay? But these are the people that control the money flow, okay? And they're also the ones that cut the money flow. They're the ones that are creating inflation, depressions, recessions, wars. These are people, the ones doing everything, right? Because they're the ones that fund everything. So in regards to this, I say to people that the reason why you're in these 30-year loans is because the banks want you to be in a 30-year loan, right? And also to that, okay, these people, I believe that these are the oppressors, the people that control the money flow, because the power and purpose exist only in the maintenance of ignorance in people in relation to money, in relation to how they can prosper, in relation to how they learn the things they learn in school, and why we have these curriculums in school. So they don't teach us how to think. They don't teach us about money and finance. They don't teach us about taxes. They don't teach us how to create ideas. They don't teach us about our minds, our brains, how strong and powerful we are, right? But they teach us things that give us a job, okay? So that when we end up having a job, we pay taxes, we pay loans, right? And that's all they want us to know. After that, everything else, they leave it up to our own means. So the important part is to understand this concept here, that we live in a system that's created by the people that have got the money so that we can make more money for them, right? So this is an important part, right? And the fear of the oppressor is an educated person, educated slave in this case, because at the moment they treat us like slaves, because obviously, right, we work, 38, 40 hours a week, but when you can see 30% of all the money goes to the tax office straight up, another 30% goes to bank, another lot of money goes to maintenance, which is on all by them as well, excuse me. So it is something that they control everything from education to health, right, to banking, to our living standards, to all the things that we eat. It's all controlled by them. Okay, so we need to know this. Now, what's coming next, which is, it's going to happen a few things. At the moment, we're experiencing, all these, inflation, high interest rates, because now, they want to take the money back, put more pressure on us, right? So we panic, so they can give us, once we panic, they're going to say, okay, they're going to say, now we're going to save you now, but in order to save you, you're going to have to go and do all these things, like all these tasks. I don't know what it is, hope it's not another injection, but things can happen. So at the moment, we've got here an resuming immigration, which means it is good for us, because now we're going to get more people in. They're going to help us to, get things moving, because we've been kind of slowing right down the last 2 years. Less people working, more people scared working from home. Now we need to get the economy running up again. So we're inviting more people in, which is great. Bit of wage stagnation, which means that now the things have gone up at a much higher pace than what our incomes are going up. But it's okay. We need to kind of live with all these things here. And of course, rising interest rates and inflation, like I said earlier, right? I heard it, most people, especially people that are on these 30-year loans. Now, the next part is if we look at what happens to 1 in 100 people when we get to retirement, right? One person would end up wealthy, 4 financially secure, 3 probably still working, and the balance would end up still having to live through some government assistance or family assistance to take them through retirement in a comfortable, dignified way. So now, when we talk about this, we say, so how do we all end up here? Okay, now the reason is because we kind of tend to follow other people around. So remember, when I dare to get a loan, right, you ask your family, ask your friends, ask your relatives, your neighbors, your co-workers, what kind of loan have you got? And they all have this 30-year principal and interest loan. Okay, so remember, 30 years principal and interest loan, which to me sounds like we're paying the principal and the small interest, right? But I'll show you in a minute that is exactly the opposite way around. Okay, so then we got 95% out of that are the followers, okay, and 1% of the seekers. Of course, the other 2 and 3% of the people are still trying to figure out how things are working, which is probably not as bad as the followers, but kind of trying to get out of it. All right, so these seekers, which are the leaders, because these are the people that go against the grain. If everybody's going towards the right-hand side, they'll go to the left-hand side, right? Because they want to know what happens. Why are all these people going that way? But they don't look happy. They look like they're struggling. So they say, I'll go and find this other one. So then we get that separation of people, right? Where the person that thinks different, okay, because it thinks, right, he starts to realize something good is happening. So when we analyze things on the basis that if we follow other people around, we think that we're going to be safe because we're groups, right? And remember, now is not the time to do this because, we're going to be rolled into a ball. We're going to be thrown somewhere because we got really no control because all we do is follow each other around. We need to be very careful with this concept of following people, right? You need to now start to think logically about what's right and what's wrong and why we're doing what we do in regards to this and how we can get out of it, because nobody's going to save us. We have to save ourselves. And how we do this is by putting really good content, good information in our minds so that our belief system will change. We need to change because beliefs, we're limited by beliefs, right? But our limitations are by our beliefs. Beliefs means that we need to change the information. That's how beliefs change. But if we don't change the source, the information doesn't change. So therefore, our beliefs remain the same. So the idea is to change the information and upgrade it. So as you know, when we begin our journey into life, our parents put us to school. They say, now go to school, stay at school, and get a profession, get a job, and then we get married. So the conclusion of all this after we get married is we're going to get ourselves our first mortgage, okay, which it is our 30-year P&R loan, right, because they give us a bit of a honeymoon rate. They call it a honeymoon rate, okay, which is a bit lower, so we can at least get us going, right, so that we end up in the big disaster 30-year life sentence, right, which, epitomizes into the biggest disaster of our lives, because some of us don't pay the mortgages for 30 years and sometimes even longer, because as you know, when we begin the journey, we end up buying a car, things, furniture, credit cards, and then comes a great big consolidation, which is maybe after 3 or 5 years into a mortgage. So in order to make things easier, what they do is consolidate. So the 30 years begin again, right? So then we got 30 years plus 5 years that were lost. So then the whole thing just never stops. So the whole concept of this paying of the mortgage quickly is, if you know, right, say for instance, if you got a $500,000 mortgage, right, you got a mortgage here, and you got to pay $500,000. Okay, so if you take it for a long time, for 30 years, right, you won't be paying the bank 500. You're probably going to pay the bank 1 million because you got to allow the interest, right? And I'll show you all that in a minute. But the idea of this concept of paying the mortgage within 5 years, right, 5 years. Right, quickly is to quickly put the money into the bank. So how you put the money into the bank, right, quickly is, okay, by looking at other income sources, okay, that are coming in, okay, based on what you can afford to do. So I'm going to show you this in a moment, right? So I want to first show you here about these oppressing people, these banking people, right, what they do and how they live, right? So what happens to our money. So in here I've got, the graph of 4 the biggest banks back in 21, they made $20 billion. Now, I'm not sure how many people work here in Australia. I don't know how many of us are working here, but I reckon it's about maybe 3 million people, 3-4 million people. Right? Out of 3-4 million people, the banks, and this is a major bank, 4 banks only, right? There's 62 banks operating here for $20 billion. Now, imagine all the others, so probably another 20 billion between the rest of the 62. So it could be $40 billion, right? So it's a lot of money, and that's because we keep paying these 30-year mortgages. So, you know, we love to pay mortgages. We love to buy houses, but we also love to pay mortgages. Okay, we understand you buy houses because they've got a potential capital growth, but why do we need to have 30-year mortgages? And the reason is because we sold these 30-year mortgages by bankers and brokers, right? Because this is what provides the biggest profit to them. Okay, so what we need to do is understand that, you know, we can do anything we want to do because the mind can achieve anything that the mind conceives. So you need to first put the idea in your mind as to what you want. Then once you believe it, right, you can rest assured you're going to get anything you want in life. This is something that most people, you know, that have studied a little bit, the brain or, you know, the laws of attraction, they practice this and it works. Okay, it works to the T, right? But, you know, most people don't understand it, that like to do things like everybody else, like watch TV, read the news, right, or talk to their mates, and that's all they do because they have no time for themselves. Because remember, the mind means oneself. Okay, how we study the mind is we need to study our own mind. It's not to study somebody else's mind. Of course, you need to look at other things as well, how neuroscience works, a bit like that. If you want to, you know, stop being part of the followers and become a seeker, you need to know how your mind works, right? So, for instance, I've got here this guy on top of the mountain, and it's meant to be the guy that climbed the Mount Everest, but I don't know why I've got this picture. Now, the guy that climbed the Mount Everest used to be a beekeeper, okay? He never went and climbed a mountain. Beekeeper, so he said, I'm going to go and climb Mount Everest. Now, no one by that point in time climbed the mountain, but this guy here, right, started first journey, went there, failed, 1951, 52 failed, now 53 got up there, right? Didn't know how he was going to do it? No, didn't know how he was going to do it. He just said, I'm going to go and do it. And then he found out how to do it on the way, but he was facing the mountain and said, I'm going to go and climb this mountain. No knowledge, nothing, he said, I'm going to go and do it, right? So, of course, he got his people there around him, right? Trackers and that, but anyway, he did it. First guy after him, maybe the thousands after that, but before then, nobody. Right? Same with the guy that ran the minute mile, right? The 4 mile guy, whatever, right? And Roger Bannister, he did the same thing. Up before him, there was nobody, right, that was ever able to run the 4 minute mile. But after him, now there's thousands, even, you know, teenagers. Right? It's because once one person does it, then everybody can do it because the mind says, well, if he can do it, I can do it too, right? So this thing about paying the mortgage, you know, the people I've just shown you before and thousands more have done it, so why can't you do it? But probably it's because you don't really want to do it. But let's say and hope that you do want to do it because then things will become easier for you, right? So the first thing we need to know is where does all our money go? Most of our money goes, you know, that is not in our pockets, goes for expenses. But some of these big ones that most of the money goes are that debt and taxes. So you need to understand these two because these are the ones that are going to suck all your life, right? And the money is going to go somewhere that you'll never see again. So you need to be very careful in learning how these two things work together, debt and taxes, right? Because these were created by the same people that control the system, right? That's how the 30 mortgages came into being in the mid 40s, right? So you need to be careful with this one here, but you need to learn because if you don't learn, then you're going to be taken for a ride, right? It's still going to be a good one. So I'm going to show here a graph that shows a bit of how the money travels, right, in a week. For most families that don't have an idea how to do this, right? But, you know, this is what happens, right? So you work 38, 40-hour week. And, you know, from Monday to Tuesday, halfway Tuesday, you'll be working for the tax office. That's it. That's your silent partner that never leaves you, right? But this is what you need to do. You need to work for the tax office. Then you work the balance of Tuesday till most of the day on Wednesday, you're going to work for the banks because you have to pay repayments and everything else. Then, you know, whatever's left of Wednesday and most of Thursday and a bit of Friday is for your maintaining your life to pay, you know, your living expenses, school fees, whatever else you do with your money, right? And, you know, thank God that we've got a bit of retirement funding in there, right? The superannuation, about 10% of your salary. That's for the, you know, long-term retirement. And then you got a bit of savings at the end of the day, right? So at the end of the week, you probably got maybe a quarter of a day of what you earn of the whole week that stays in your pocket, depending on how much money you spend in living expenses, right? So this is what happens to most people. Now, this is what happens for a long time, 30 years, right? Can you imagine, you know, how much money you're going to keep out of all that, right? So I'm going to show you now in terms of interest rate, what interest rates have been back from 1959. So from 1959 to about 2020, I've got here, right, the rate of interest up in back in 1960 was around 5%. In 1970 it was around about 6.8. 1980 was around 8 or 9% or 10%. Yeah, in 1990 was 70%, right? And that's when we had the inflation that we had to have, right, or the recession that we had to have, thanks to Paul Keating in those days, right? So then it dropped down to around about 7.3 in 2000. Then it went up to about 8% in 2010, and it dropped to around about 4 point something right in 2020. And then when we had the pandemic, right, we dropped down to around about 1.92%. So now there's only one way, and that is up. Right, so now we're going up. Now, how far we're going to get to, I'm not sure, right? But my prediction is we're going to see around 10% before things start to come down a bit. So it's going to be a lot of pain coming through, but there's ways around it that you will be able to see now how to navigate that. And for some, very clever reason, the higher the interest rate, the better it gets for this particular strategy, right? So I will show you how that works. So this next slide talks about how all this works, right? So first of all, I'm going to put in here an example of a person that it's got a $500,000 mortgage, and it's got $11,000 net income, combined income, two partners, right? Spends around $2,500 a month in living expenses, and the repayment at 5% is around $2,800, right? So that means that this particular person, if you're paying $2,800 a month for 30 years, if the loan rate never went up, they'll be paying to the bank $1,008,000. Then from all that money they paid to the bank, about $508,000 is just interest for the loan worth $500,000. But if you work at the income that you have to earn to make those repayments, it's calculated around about $1.34 million. And that's looking at the 25% average tax rate, which is the average, which most people pay a lot more than that, right? So you can imagine around about 3 times the money you have to earn than what you owe to the bank to make one mortgage fully paid. 30 years. Now, so 30 years is a long time because lots of things go wrong in 30 years. Your health, things happen, right? You lose your job here and there, right? So a lot of things happen, but that's what most people do. But when they sign the contract, nobody tells them this story. So you just go and sign the contract, quickly get out of the bank. You got your house, and then you've got this scenario here. Right? So how do we stop this? Is we need to be very clever to understand, okay, we need to get out of this mess. How do we do it? Now, this is the part I'll explain again. The whole idea here is that you need to consider that if you got a $500,000 loan, you got to try and put as quickly as possible $500,000 in an account so you can offset each other. Now, how do you do it? Right? And you need to understand what incomes can be coming in apart from your own salary. So I say to people, okay, let's look at an investment property, right? Because an investment property will have rent and will have refunds from the tax office. Now, in between these two here is where things get really interesting for investors, because we're going to use the rental incomes, the tax refunds, plus bank products to put $500,000 in 5 years. Okay, and this kind of income is kind of an average thing anyway. So I'm going to show you first what happens in the banking system with a $500,000 loan. So if you got a $500,000 loan at 5%, and this comes from the the website, mortgage calculator from one of the biggest banks, in fact the biggest bank in Australia, right? So that tells you that your official repayment would be at 5% would be $2,685 per month. Right? Now, what I've got here is I've got you to work out this number, and I'll do it for you. So if you pay the bank $2,685 per month by 12 months by 5 years, you would give the bank $161,000. Now, if the rate never changes, remain at 5%, you'd give the bank in 5 years $161,000. But when you understand here what happens from this loan after 5 years, you still owe the bank $158,000. You say, what happened here? How come I gave the bank $161,000 on a $500,000 loan and I still owe them $458,000? So then you think, well, that's strange, because isn't this called a principal and interest loan? Yes, but because they play with words to make you feel good, right, until you realize this is not a principal and interest loan. This is an interest and principal loan, because most of the money goes in is interest. Now, let me show you something even worse, which is what we're going to get to soon, right? This is if the rates go to 7%. If it goes to 7%, right, now your repayments are higher, right? So if you go 3,327 times 12 times 5, so now you're going to give the bank $199,000 in 5 years. But if you go and ask the bank, what do I owe you now that I pay you $199,000 at 7%, you owe us more than if it was 5%. So now you owe the bank $470,000. So the higher the interest, okay, the more interest you pay. So this principal and interest loan is really a rip-off interest and principal. So it means that you're paying a lot of the interest up front. Now, that's not good for you, right? So then you realize, well, I've got to get out of this mess, right? So this is how you're going to do it. So we're going to talk about this part here. This is how the cash flow, right, happens to be for a family that is got $500,000 mortgage, and I put in here $500,000 investment, getting $500 per week. So this is how it works. Now, focus on the first line and the third line, or the first three lines. So the first line is the money that's going to be kind of the offset account that is going to be sitting where all the cash will sit. Second line is going to be, or it is the actual outstanding loan for the home loan. The third line is the payable, the interest payable on the loan as it goes through. So you see here, and I'm going to stick to this line for a moment, right? So you see here, and the owner, which is the second line, owner occupier, net balance, okay? So net balance before you start is 500. After 1 year, it'll be 309, then 293, then 183, then 71,000. After that, it'll be zero. And that's because in the first year, you're going to put in $101,000 in the offset account, second year, 206, and so on. By the time you get up to the end of the fifth year, beginning of the sixth year, you'll have $546,000, which neutralizes the loan, right? But also here in the third line shows you the repayments, because as the years go by, right, because you've got that money in the offset, it'll offset the loan, so therefore the repayments will go to zero. Now, this is a quick, rush kind of information for you, but now I'm gonna talk a little bit about the cash flow. So the cash flow is the red is the monies go out, the green the money goes in. Now I made this in a very conservative, I'm using conservative numbers, right? Because you will be able to see it in here in the cash flow, all the things that you have to pay, which is the home repayments, the interest repayments on the investment, the holding cost on the properties, the tax on the rent, and the living expenses at, as we said, $2,500 a month. So in the first year, right, you spend $70,000 to cover all the expenses, including everything. What comes in is a salary, $11,000 a month, plus a rental income, plus a tax refund, $172. So by subtracting $172 of money coming in to $70,000 money going out, you'll end up with $101,000 sitting in your offset account. So therefore, now you only pay interest on the difference. Okay, so over 5 years here, right, you'll see the offset account surpass the loan. So therefore, now you've got more than 500. So therefore, neutralizes the debt on your house. So then now you're off scot-free. Nothing else to pay for the bank for this. Now you work for you. Don't work for the bank anymore, right? So I know it's a quick rush example, but I need to talk a bit more about what happens, right? So now you'll see how the money travels using this trading. Now remember, this is only one property. Most people can afford to buy one every 2 years once you do this, right? But I just said one property for now. All right, so now you work for Mondays only for the tax office. Ooh, that's great, right? So only Monday, and you work only Tuesday for the bank. Then you still got your living expenses, and now you see a lot of money savings. You a lot more savings because now this $101,000 is savings. That is in your bank account. Now, if you got money in the bank, you will feel a lot better, right? You'll become feeling better. You'll feel healthy. You'll feel you're free, right? Because you're now accumulating your money in the bank, in the offset account, not in the banks. You don't put in the money into the bank, right? You put the money in the offset, which is exactly the same, but you control the money, not the bank, right? So this will see yourself into a situation that you have more control of your money in your life, and of course the taxes and everything else will be working for you, okay, not against you, right? So now we're going to talk about now the most common goals that people have when they come to see us here. And the first one is, of course, I want to pay my mortgage quick. And now that interest is going up, everyone worries about this. And the second one is, how do we get rid of the taxes? Because, obviously some people make more money because they try to pay the mortgage quick so they can take extra jobs, right? But that means it doesn't mean they're going to get all the money because they just pay more taxes as well. So the thing is, how to achieve what we want here, but also see how we can get rid of the taxes while we're trying to create wealth for the future. So these are the most common goals of most of our clients are paying off the mortgage, money for lifestyle, right? Children's education, important, also help others, because once you learn how to do this, you need to think about, all right, now I've got myself set up, now I'm going to help my children. I'm going to help my friends, my relatives, right? This is some of the things you need to think about, right? Now, which is the most important goal for you is important to know and really describe what you want, because if you're just saying you want to pay the mortgage, but you don't have a reason why you want to pay the mortgage apart this, you're struggling, right? It might not propel you to start. So the idea is that it provokes you and actually wakes you up, and then want to say, look, I want to do this because I can see that I'm not only going to pay my home loan quicker, but I'll be able to invest to start to generate wealth so I can really retire within 10 years. Because you can, like, I mean, you saw the people before that I showed before, right? Those people have got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 properties. Now, they don't have to work past 10 years because they're creating, lots of equity every year, right? And, what happens after that, then we just start selling the first one, right, which is most likely going to be fully paid. And, you work out your taxes then, but things get a lot easier when you invest, right? If you're scared about investing, well, you're always going to be scared about doing everything, because wait till they hand you the bill for not investing, right? Because it's going to be a much, much, worse bill if you don't invest. You need to do something. Okay, so why people use property is because property gives us extra rental income. It gives us, or helps us reduce our taxes, which means increases our pocket money or cash flow. Right? It's got also capital appreciation. Historical capital appreciation is good to work on, right, and base our decisions. And obviously helps us to get out of the 30-year incarceration from banks. So these are a critical point as well to understand. Now I'm going to show here now what happens to property for the past 120, 140 years. Right, back in the late 1800s, property was around $10,000, right, and then it started to go up, going up. Now back in around about, you see here around about 70, when the monetary was taken off the concept that you have to have gold before you bring money. Richard Nixon said in 1971, okay, we're not going to back our money, our printing machine of money with gold, which is going to print whatever we want, right? So because they're controlling everything, throwing bombs at everybody. So they say, okay, we're not going to say anything, right? We're just going to be happy with that, right? But that's how things started to get really out of control, right? Inflation went up really high because obviously, money printing means let's just chuck the money in there. People started to buy, the consumerism became more rampant, right? People buying things, put more money in, right? So then property keeps going up and up and up and up. And on top of that, back in the, early 1900s, the population in the world was 1.6 plus billion. And obviously now we've got 7 plus billion. So it's like a huge increase in population, which means, more activity. But still, we can say that property, it is in Australia, at least, is a good investment to have, because at least here the government relies a lot in the private sector to provide housing for people to live and rent, because they're using the money, from taxes to do other things. Okay, so it is an important thing. So what are the alternatives you can do? Well, you've got 4 alternatives in order to do this. One is to, experience and explore different avenues of doing things, right? You need to try things, ask people to do this as an opinion, right? But don't ask banks or brokers, right? And the best thing to do is to, just try and find a way of how other people can help you do it. Or you can say, I will do nothing, right? So, but those things that you need to think about what your decision is. But one thing is, for sure, is that now, okay, you have some alternatives to see how you could get out of these 30-year mortgage to help your family. And, help your family means that, instead of giving the money, okay, to the bank manager's children, you keep it for your own children. Because in the end, that's what it's all about, right? You are giving the money away for somebody else's children. Those guys don't need it more than you do, right? But by investing, by seeing the alternatives, you'll bring it back towards your family. Okay, so now I'm going to be talk about a bit of the core service of our company, just to make sure you know what we do. So our company, as I said earlier, started back in 96. And what we do is we help people achieve wealth, right? The service that we provide are, lots of things we do. So we provide our clients the know-how, how this works. We've got the finances. We run a 10-year rental support in case you have tenancies. We've got properties to look at. We do taxes for our clients twice a year. Okay, we also provide people the know-how and how they could invest in property using superannuation. So we've got a whole host of professional consultants that work with us for our clients to make sure that you get a huge number of people that are professional in the fields of expertise so they can guide you before you make your decisions. So like I said earlier, right, you need to look at how things work, okay, before you make a decision to do something, but you need to look, because if you don't look, you're going to be stuck in this rut of doing everything the same every day, right, without getting anywhere. Because now is the time you need to say, okay, nobody's going to save us, so you need to save yourself. So it means you need to start to take the steps. And when here, we don't want anyone to buy anything. We just want them to see it. Once you see it, then it's up to you. Okay, but once you see it, you'll be able to understand it, because when you listen to things, you forget. When you see it, you remember for a little bit, but only when you actually do it is when you understand. And remember that you don't know this because you've never been there, but it's all about once you decide that's what you want and you believe in yourself that you will have this, right, then everything will come together to you and you will learn how it's done. Okay, so anyway, I hope that you've had some good ideas out of what I've just said, and I hope that you have a great evening. And if you've got any questions, please get in touch with us. There's our number. You can contact us, you can email us, so that we're there. We can help you and see how we can further advance your life financially by helping you with our ideas and strategies. And so you can see how you can pay the mortgage within 5 to 7 years. Okay. Anyway, thank you. It's lovely to see you again after, I think it's about 6 weeks since we've been online, but and we look forward to seeing you soon.